So how did this start? I get a call from Dr. Vitow, and he says, "You're a lawyer, right?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Do you believe in the Constitution?" I said, "Yes." "You understand the First Amendment?" "Yes." "And the right to free speech?" I said, "Yes." He said, "How'd you like to give one?" So for all of you people who are trying to guess how much this beautiful, magnificent, very, very extraordinary yeshiva is paying this big shot lawyer to give up half a day, the answer is nothing. This is my way, in some respects, of first of all saying thank you to Dr. Vitow, because before he came here, he was at Hafter. My kids went to school while he was there. They both turned out great. My grandchildren go there now, and he set a precedent in that school, which he copied here, and it's still an extraordinary place. And my oldest grandchild is now a freshman at Harvard, and that's not bad. So I thank Dr. Vitow for everything he did in my community, and I think you have a right to thank him too, because this was an idea. But looking at you and looking at this place, it's clear it was a good idea. So kol hakavod, and thank you, sir. So let me explain something to you. With success and mazel, I think there comes an obligation to give back. And to the extent that I can from time to time do that, this is an example of giving back. But when Dr. Vitow asked me to do this many, many months ago, the difficulty with my life is I don't control where I am on a given day. And right now there are several judges looking for me. So I gave him my commitment, but this isn't easy to show up on a Thursday morning after a whole month of Yontif and come out to Great Neck. But I'm glad I'm here, and I hope this is as important to you as it is to me, and I hope it works. And if it doesn't, you probably never see me again, hopefully. I'm not here because I want business. I hope never to see any of you in my office. I'm like an oncologist, you know? No one's ever happy to see an oncologist. No one's ever happy to see me. The only difference is when an oncologist loses, they die. When I lose, I get letters for 20 years. So I'm happy to be here, and I hope you take away something from this morning. And I want to make an impression by starting with the thought that Rabbi Vitow touched on, words. Words really matter. Sometimes one word can change the outcome of a project, can change the outcome of a relationship, can change a life. And I want to give you an example of how one word matters, and it's funny. I hope you'll find it funny. It wasn't funny at the time, but when you talk about it, it's funny. So I'll share it with you, because sometimes humor is a very good way, an effective way of making a point. So I live in Lawrence, and the shul I go to and Dr. Vitow belongs to is Beth Shalom. And since my parents have died, I've tried to honor them whenever I can. And I think my father, who was a very, very big shul person, because he lived through Kristallnacht, seeing all of the shuls destroyed, throughout his life he wanted to be in part of a big shul. So if you come to Beth Shalom in Lawrence, you will see the parochas that is used every Shabbos in the main sanctuary is dedicated to my parents by me and my children and grandchildren, by my family. And like other shuls, on Yontif, they changed the parochas to an all-white parochas. And I thought that for those days, for when it's Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, my father would understand, and my mother certainly would understand, that if instead of dedicating it to them, we made it in memory of the 6 million Jews who were murdered in the Shoah, including many of my mother's family. So that's what I asked the rabbi to do, and that's the way it came out. And there was an unveiling when we were invited to look at the parochas for the first time. And I come in and I'm looking at the parochas, and it says, in memory of the 6 million Jews murdered by Linda and Ben Brafman. And I read it again and again and again, and I was, you know, I didn't want to say anything that could hurt anyone's feelings, but I couldn't help myself. I went up to the rabbi and I said, this is not what I had in mind. I don't want my grandchildren to be coming, and great-grandchildren be coming to this shul for the rest of their lives, think like their grandparents or great-parents were like somehow responsible for the Shoah. So the word dedicated was missing. And we had it redone, and it was in memory of the 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust, dedicated by Linda and Ben Brafman. One word. One word. All the difference in the world in terms of what it meant, how it looked, and what it would mean for generations to come. So let's talk about one word that can make a Chilul Hashem, that can create a Chilul Hashem. One word, please. Thank you. Excuse me. And this is a very well-respected school. And I'm not suggesting that you need Musar, and I don't give Musar because I'm not a Rebbe and I'm not a scholar. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. But I'm probably, with all respect to the rabbis in this room, I'm probably the most observant person in this room. Not because I'm the most frum, and not because I observe the most mitzvahs and rules, but because I see things that other people don't, because by training as a trial lawyer and from experience as a trial lawyer is I watch people, I watch events unfold, and maybe I've been blessed with the gift to observe and actually take note, and sometimes I see things that other people don't see. So let me give you a perfect example. You know, most places where Jews lived are surrounded by places to eat. It's just part of our culture and part of our history, and because we have special dietary needs, when Orthodox Jews move in, a lot of facilities open eventually that cater to kosher needs. So I'm in a kosher pizza store on Central Avenue, one of many, and I'm there with my wife and another couple who is a well-respected doctor in our community and his wife, and we're sitting there just having a bite, and I am 5 or 6 tables away from the front door, and a woman is trying to get into the restaurant, and she is well into a pregnancy. She is pushing a double stroller. She is talking on a cell phone with her ear bent, and she's trying to open the door. It's sort of impossible, quite frankly, given what I've just described, and her condition with the double stroller. The door pulls out. And in the first 4 tables are kids with yarmulkes, some from modern Orthodox shuls, some from very frum shuls. Not one kid got up to open the door. We did. Middle-aged people, older by 40 years, maybe 50 years, of any of the kids in that room. And I'll tell you what occurred to me. All of the people besides one who work behind the counter are Hispanic. The only interaction they ever have with the Shomer Shabbos Orthodox person is in that pizza store, because they don't live with you. They come to work from other communities, not from communities, and all of them were watching this woman's struggle, and not one kid. And they all saw what I saw, but they were too busy with a falafel or a pizza slice just to get out of the chair and push the door open. And in that moment, it occurred to me that while our kids are doing great in school and getting into wonderful universities throughout the country and the world and spending years in Eretz Yisrael and coming back as very frum Orthodox, Shomer Torah mitzvahs kids like you and the people who preceded you here, there's something missing from the quality of education that they are getting. There's something missing from what's being taught at home. There's something missing what's being taught at home by parents who in many ways are wonderful people and in some ways just indifferent to the havoc they sometimes cause by double parking on a main thoroughfare on a Friday afternoon when you just need one thing and you run into a store and your car is then there for 15 minutes and everyone else is either inconvenienced or there is a accident waiting to happen. And you know, I have a very busy schedule and I do a lot of the work in the car because I go from courtroom to courtroom to courtroom. So I'm not trying to tell you this to impress you, but I have someone who is driving. I'm not driving. And I'll tell you what it causes me to do sometimes when I'm not working. I look out the window and I watch. 75% of the people passing me are texting or looking at their phone while they're driving. And it occurs to me that despite all of the public relations about the dangers inherent in texting while driving, or forget about talking on the phone, just texting and driving or looking at the email as it responds, everybody still does it. And they do it not recognizing that they're putting other people's lives in danger and forget their own. So I want to talk to you about texting for a moment, but not texting while driving, texting while living. You know, this is a news cycle where, as never before in the history of this country, we are dominated by stories involving emails and how much damage they may cause and how it could impact on the selection of a president of the United States. And whether you're for Clinton or Trump, I don't really care. I don't care. It's none of my business, and I'm not here to take a position. But I'm telling you that you should know, if not from the news cycle, then from me, that texting is forever. Emails are forever. Anything you say in an email or a text is going to be there for the rest of your life if someone wants to find it. And once you hit send, you have no control over where it goes. And if you hit reply all when you only meant to hit reply, God help you if some of the people who get that message were the subject of what you're texting or talking about. I've seen marriages ruined. I've seen careers destroyed. I've seen people as young as you tarnished for the rest of their lives by one errant text that either shows that you're inconsiderate or mean-spirited or bigoted. And it will track you. And you'll be in a proceeding 20 years from now where you will be appointed to be a judge, and someone will find it when they vet you, and you won't be a judge. Or you'll try and get into a very good school, and someone who you hurt by a text will do something to undermine your ability to get into that school. It's that easy, and it's that permanent. And if you Google me, you will see that 20 years ago, the New York Times wrote an article about my ability to win cases even when the government has tape-recorded evidence, and I'm able to essentially take those tapes and use them to my advantage. And you know why? Because tape recordings have a voice and a tenor to what's being said. You can understand whether someone is being serious, whether someone is being facetious, whether someone is being sarcastic, intending to say something as a joke. There is no tenor to a text. When you say, "I wish you were dead," it means you wish they were dead. It's not exasperation that might come up in a tape where everyone knows you're not being serious. If a mother texts her kid, "If you're late, I'm going to kill you," it doesn't look good when someone else sees that text. When, God forbid, the parents are going through a divorce and one spouse is claiming that the other parent is very mean or abusive to the children. So, if nothing else, so let me give you my one Dvar Torah, which is easy because it's like a one-liner. The Rambam, I believe, is attributed to having said, "Think before you speak, think twice before you write." Because when you write, it's permanent. When you speak, it passes. If you call someone a bad name and you apologize, it's past, it's over. No one else has heard what you said except you and the person who you said it to. I'm not suggesting that it's okay to do that. You know, this year, and as you get older, you look at the al-khaits more and more and more to see which ones are interesting and which ones are easy. So I'm going to give you a pass on all of the al-khaits that involve sex. We won't talk about them. I'll assume that you're all being good about that stuff. And if you're not, I'm certainly not going to discuss it. But I'll tell you what most of the other al-khaits involve. Speech. When I was in yeshiva, I was not a good Talmud student. I went to a very frum school. I didn't like it. They didn't like me. And on the day I was being expelled from this yeshiva, at age 12, my father had to come and get me. And I remember this till the day I die, and I'm sure he did till the day he died, when the Rebbe, who was essentially throwing me out of yeshiva, in parting words, said to my father, despite all of his flaws as a student, your son Binyamin has been blessed by Hashem with the ability to communicate effectively. Maybe one day he will use it for good. This is the day. So I've lived long enough to make that Rebbe's dream come true. And if I'm communicating effectively with some or all of you, or maybe even if just one or two, then it's worth the aggravation I will get later today because I'm going to be late everywhere else I'm supposed to be. So let's talk for a minute about what Rabbi Vitow used as an introduction. And it's interesting because we did not discuss what I would talk about. We did not talk about the subject matter. And I did not really understand that the primary focus was going to be on derech eretz. The primary focus was going to be on civility. So let me talk about derech eretz, and let me talk about civility, and let me talk about how easy it is to make a Kiddush Hashem or a Chilul Hashem. And one of the things I see is I'm an Orthodox Jew, but I live in the secular world. I travel in circles that you don't. I deal with celebrities, I deal with judges, I deal with the media. They know me to be Shomer Shabbos. They know me to be Orthodox. They respect it. I don't flaunt it. I don't wear a yarmulke when I go to work. But every judge who I appear before knows that at 2 o'clock on Friday in the winter I'm leaving early. And while 35 years ago I used to have to fight for that, now it's just a given. They all know it, and most of them respect it. Certainly the non-Jewish judges respect it. But let me tell you something about the interaction with the non-Jewish community. The interesting thing about us is that we know thousands of people. Everyone in this room, by the time you are my age, will know thousands of people from camp, from yeshiva, from college, from shul, from your community. When you marry, a whole new half of the world will show up. When you become a parent, other parents. When you become a grandparent, other grandchildren. By the time you're my age, you will know personally thousands of people. Non-Jews don't have that interaction with so many people. They don't have that interaction. I've gone to funerals for just private Jewish men and women. There are 1,500 people in the room. I've gone to funerals for very prominent non-Jews, and there are 30 people in the room, and most of them are blood relatives. We interact with so many people that the responsibility to be menschlich is more substantially needed in our community than anywhere else. Plus, whether you understand this or not, and I'm not looking to frighten you, we are growing up in a world where there is instant communication. That's good and it's bad. And I know most of the people in this room have read A Tale of Two Cities, but it's the best of times and it's the worst of times. The best of times is you have opportunities to do stuff that my generation didn't have. In technology, in robotics, in science, in medicine, you're going to be doing things that 30, 40 years ago were inconceivable. The internet was inconceivable. To be able to press a button on my cell phone when I'm in a car doing 60 miles an hour and within seconds be able to speak to my son who is in his car in Yerushalayim traveling at 60 miles an hour is, to me, still extraordinary, and we take it for granted. Speed dial. Being able to press a button and send your message to thousands of people. And believe me, we have no shortage of Jewish organizations e-blasting every 30 seconds news from in our community. And sometimes it's not good news. Sometimes it's bad news. Sometimes it's scandal. Sometimes it's lashon hara. Sometimes it's unfortunate. But what you must understand and should know, and not to make you afraid, but to make you wary, the world is a tough place. Trust me, I deal with tough people. The world is a tough place, and it's a tougher place if you are Jewish. And it's a much tougher place if today you are an advocate on behalf of the state of Eretz Yisrael. Because to the rest of the world, if Israel were wiped off the face of the earth tomorrow, most people would not care. Most people would sigh in relief, because this little tiny nation that apparently causes so much aggravation for the rest of the world who don't understand it, they would not be unhappy. They would be relieved. And you're living through a time when Israel bashing is prominent on every major university in the world. And you need to know what you're talking about when you go to college and you want to defend Eretz Yisrael. You just can't stand up and say, I'm Yisrael Chai, I'm proud to be a Jew. You need to know what the facts are. You need to be able to respond intelligently and forcefully to the lies that are spread about Eretz Yisrael, and you need to learn that in this school and in the next school you go to, and then you need to teach it to your children and your grandchildren. And you know what? We are not doing a good job, because there are students in prominent universities throughout the country who cower when the subject of Israel comes up. And instead of defending Israel, instead of standing up, they're embarrassed, or they're afraid to rock the boat or take a stand. They're complacent in the fact that if I'm not wearing my yarmulke, but I'm still Orthodox, maybe they won't know, and maybe they won't bring up the subject. And if they bring up the subject, I say things like, well, my family lives there, so I support Israel. Or you really don't know what you're talking about. So teach them. Teach them and learn for yourself. There are assignments this school could undertake. And with all respect, I don't know whether you do it or not, but if you just read the Wall Street Journal every Tuesday, or Googled Bret Stephens, who is one of the most respected journalists in the world, and read some of his columns in support of Israel, you would see, first of all, that he's brilliant. Second, that he's not writing it because he's Orthodox, because he's not. He's not writing it because he loves Eretz Yisrael, although he does. He's writing it because he's being intellectually honest. And being intellectually honest is a grave failure in the world of journalism today. Most journalists are not intellectually honest. And this election can show you in clear and precise ways how, depending on what channel you read or what publication you read, there are direct, contrasting views about almost everything. But study the facts about Eretz Yisrael. Understand what you're talking about. Know what you're talking about. Be smart enough to respond substantively, not just in a cute or sarcastic way. And don't be silent. Don't be silent. Don't be embarrassed. The Jewish community is a good community. It is one of the best communities. I want to tell you a great story. It's a true story. So, it's fashionable for people of means now to have destination weddings. When I grew up, there was no such thing as a destination wedding. Now there are destination weddings. So my wife and I were invited to a magnificent Ritz-Carlton in a place that I won't mention by a wonderful couple who are having a destination wedding. And this Ritz-Carlton had never seen 600 hungry Jews before. So on a weekend Shabbos, the amount of food consumed in that building could feed several countries. And throughout the weekend, there was a large man, a Haitian man, who was in charge of the dining room. And he was the nicest man I've ever encountered. He was just so gracious and so courteous and so welcoming and so helpful. And all he did all weekend was go out of his way to try and make us feel comfortable. And I was stunned by how magnificent this was. Ritz-Carlton is known for high-class service. It's not known for warmth. And this man was maybe the warmest human being I've ever encountered over an extended period of time. And as being someone who's observant, I noticed this. So I couldn't help myself, and one day I walked up to him, introduced myself, and he didn't know who I was. He didn't recognize me, as much as you may find that hard to believe. He didn't know I'm a well-known lawyer. He just saw me as one of the guests. And he said, "Excuse me, sir, I must tell you, I've been watching you all weekend, and I don't know how to begin saying thank you for the kindness that you've extended in this room to these guests who are sometimes so ravenous that it's almost inappropriate." He looked at me and he said, "I'm from Haiti. When we suffered our earthquake, your soldiers delivered my grandson. Your soldiers got my father the dialysis he needed to live. Your soldiers brought oxygen tanks for my mother, who suffers from emphysema. Because of the kindness of the Israeli army, my family lives, and I have a grandson. So eat." Do you understand what a Kiddush Hashem Israel made to people who had never seen that kind of kindness extended? Israel was the first country to go to Haiti with the field hospital, with 250 doctors, nurses, and trained technicians. They saved lives, they delivered children, they kept people alive. He didn't go to Haiti because it was good for the economy of Israel. He didn't go to Haiti because Haiti is a close political ally of Israel. They went to Haiti because the fundamental underpinning of the Jewish religion is chesed. Pure, simple chesed. To be kind to people in need. And Israel does everything well in science and medicine and technology, in Torah. You know what they don't do well? They don't do public relations well. The Orthodox Jewish community does not do public relations well. When someone is in trouble, it's front page. When thousands of yeshiva kids deliver hundreds of packages of food every Thursday night in Tomchei Shabbos, I rarely see a story focusing on that. When you stand in front of NYU Hospital in the morning and see bus after bus of Hasidic women coming there with packages of food to distribute to people in the hospital, I don't see that being covered by the mass media. That's what you need to do when you do your chesed projects. It's not bragging. It's not being a Baal Gaiva. When you're doing chesed, I don't mean privately. I'm not suggesting that if you give $10 to a tzedakah that you put it in print and advertise it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when the school or your shul or your community engages in a project that brings shining light on the values of the Jewish community, it should be promoted. It should be talked about by non-Jews. By non-Jews. And it should be talked about by Jews. And it should be talked about by non-Orthodox Jews. Because the values that we're supposed to be teaching are being taught, and sometimes they're even being exhaustively carried out, but they're not always necessarily shared with communities outside. And I want to tell you how making a Kiddush Hashem or making a Chol Hashem happens sometimes without any planning whatsoever and can have lasting impact on the people who you will meet for the rest of your lives. Let me give you a true example. I have a son, believe it or not, who is a Rosh Kollel in Israel. He is a brilliant kid, a graduated Haftar, could have done anything he wanted to, including being a better lawyer than me, but he got interested in Torah. And he runs a kollel, and he started a yeshiva, and he has a Brafman shul in Ramat Eshkol. And if you go to Ramat Eshkol and you ask anyone, they will tell you that David Brafman and Jasmine Brafman basically are involved in every good thing that happens in that community. So he's a very frum kid, much more frum than I am. Doesn't wear a kippah sruga, wears a black yarmulke and a hat. And he has his tzitzis out. And he always has on a black pair of pants and a white shirt and his tzitzis out. But he understands kibbud of aim. And now I think he also learned a powerful lesson because he was a respectful son. We grew up very close. And to be honest with you, I'm a very big baseball fan. And I'm a Mets fan. And he came into New York for a wedding. He was only going to be in New York for Shabbos. He came Friday, and he was leaving Sunday night. And Sunday afternoon, I had been given by a client great seats for the Mets game. So I said, David, it's been years. You've been in Israel for 18 years. It's been years since we went to a ball game. We used to go to 30 games here. Come with me to a ball game today. And he said, I'm only here one day. I said, David, it'll be so great. It'll be just like old times. You and me at a ball game. And he said, okay. And he said, okay, because he knew it meant a lot to me. So we went to the game. Now I'm in jeans and a t-shirt and a baseball hat. And he's in a black yarmulke, white shirt, black pants, and his tzitzis out. And we're sitting in very plushiv seats. Now I've been going to ball games for 50 years. I've never caught a foul ball. And I don't know what it is about catching a foul ball at a baseball game that causes, middle-aged people to dive out of the upper deck for this $12 ball. But it's exciting when it comes to you and people scramble over each other and it becomes like a balagan for about 10 seconds. So we're sitting there and a pop fly comes and my son stands up, reaches out, and he catches the ball. And right below him is an 8-year-old kid with red hair and a glove, and he would have gotten the ball if my son didn't reach out because he was taller than him. And the kid was about to burst into tears. And David reached down and gave him the ball. And he got a standing ovation from thousands of people in all of the sections that could see what had happened because it was on the big screen. And I turned to him and I said, David, you know why it was basher that you come to this game with me? Because what you just did is probably more important than all of the Torah you've learned up to this point insofar as of real value to the Jewish community. Because I live in the secular world. Tomorrow, at workplaces throughout the city of New York, Goyim are going to say they were at a game and they saw this Jewish guy catch a ball and give it to a little kid. And it was really cool, it was really nice. Now, had you kept the ball, those same people would have said, I was at a ball game and some Jewish guy just reached out and snatched the ball from some little kid. In that moment, you maybe changed the perspective of maybe 1, maybe 100, maybe 10 people, maybe all of those people, that Jewish people are not just rich, aggressive, money-hungry people who we are sometimes portrayed as. In that moment, you showed that a Jewish person, even a religious person, could give a foul ball to a little kid. And to be honest with you, I was miserable. I wanted the ball. I've never been close to a foul ball. And he looked at me and he said, this is a powerful moment that we created. Thank you for talking me into going to this game. I said to him, why'd you go to the game? Tell me the truth. You're only here one day. You got thousands of people who want to see you before you go back. He said, yeah, but I only have one dad. So it was a good time for him. It was a good time for me. And I think Hashem rewarded him for being a mensch. And he rewarded me for being able to share in that moment. But the point of that story is not to tell you that I have a great son and a great daughter and been blessed with a great wife and children and grandchildren and even my sister who schlepped out here to listen to me. But I'm telling you that you every day have one of those moments. When you're in a pizza store and you buy 2 slices and the kid from Guatemala behind the counter hands it to you and you just grab it and walk away without saying, "Thank you, sir," that's the only interaction he has with Jews. He doesn't live in a Jewish community. He doesn't know anything about Jews. He only understands what he sees. So if he sees you as a classy, well-groomed, gentle person who stops to say thank you to someone who's probably making less than minimum wage for working in a pizza store, it's good. It's good for you, and it's good for me, and it's good for all of us. And that's, one of the messages I think I'm hoping to convey, that you don't live in a shtetl. A shtetl used to be a place in Europe, and now maybe in Borough Park or Williamsburg or someplace in Mea Shearim, where you're only surrounded by other people exactly like you. And as a consequence, sort of different rules started to apply, because it's okay if we act like chayes, because we're only acting like chayes in front of other chayes. So no one's going to embarrass. You ever been on an LL flight? You don't own that plane. It's not your living room. It's not your den. The people who serve you don't work for you. When you're screaming and yelling across several aisles to friends because you can, you're disturbing hundreds of people who may be trying to sleep or work. And we don't focus on these things unless someone points them out. And I think, I'm glad I see a sprinkling of parents, because I really think some of this stuff is what should be discussed in the home. But this is an extension of the home. This is an extension of your home, because you come back and someone is going to say to you, "Wow, you were listening to Ben Brafman this morning? What did he have to say? Did he talk about law as a career? No. Did he talk about any of his famous cases? Not really. Did he tell you what he attributes, his success to? I'll tell you what I attribute my success to, okay? And I've gotten awards all over the country, and I say this every time I'm given a plaque or a piece of glass or lucite and honored by someone. I say to the audience, there are people in this room who have better academic credentials than I do. There are people in this room who may be smarter than I am. There's nobody in this room who has worked harder than I have in the last 40 years. There are no shortcuts. You need mazel, and I'm grateful for the mazel that I have had, and you need to work hard. And if you don't have mazel and you work hard, you may not succeed. But if you work hard, sometimes mazel finds its way into your life because you've earned it. So when you go to universities very soon and you leave the shtetl, if you will, although it's a magnificent shtetl, when you leave the shtetl of the North Shore Hebrew Academy, where everybody is almost the same, I'm looking around the room and I'm saying, there must be only one barber in Great Neck. Think about it for a minute. I think you are living in a cocoon, and it's a beautiful cocoon built by very good people who mean well, and your teachers and principals and rebbes are among the best in the world of education. But you're going to leave this place, and you're going to go into the real world, and you're going to work in the real world. When I graduated law school, some of the law firms in Lower Manhattan, the white shoe major law firms that many of you will try and end up at, they wouldn't hire a Shomer Shabbos guy or gal, even if they were brilliant. They just wouldn't want to deal with it. There's a closing on Friday and you're going to leave at 2 o'clock. Give me a break. There's a merger on Shmini Atzeres. What's Shmini Atzeres? Go try and explain Shmini Atzeres to a guy. I dare you. Try and explain it to a Jew who's non-observant. It's impossible. You know, several years ago, I had to be in Tallahassee, Florida for a case. And I didn't want to be there, but it was a long-standing client. I couldn't abandon him, and I came down there, and I knew right away that I was out of my element because, like, you know, I was the only person walking around in the building whose jacket matched his pants. And I said, I'm not used to this. And I turned to my client and said, you need to get local counsel. He said, well, you're my lawyer. I ain't leaving. You're not leaving me. So we go to the court, and the judge welcomes me. He's very nice. And he says, I want to tell you something, Mr. Brafman. He says, in this town, I run the courtroom. And Luann in the back, she runs my schedule. And with dates she picks, you show up. So I don't want to hear about how busy you are, and I don't want to hear anything else. So I go in the back, and there's Luann, you know, with blue hair, and I'm the first person. I'm the first Jew she ever met, in my opinion. And she's setting the court schedule, and it's August when I'm there, and she says, you're going to come back on September 8th. I said, excuse me, and I'm looking at my calendar. I said, September 8th is Rosh Hashanah. And she says to me, what's that? You know, you think everyone knows what Rosh Hashanah is. It's one of our biggies, right? So I said, well, it's a major Jewish holiday. It's the New Year. For 2 days I have to be in temple. I can't work. It's a high holy day, and I just can't be here. I'm observant, and this is my religious holy day. So she flips the page and says, okay, you're going to come back the following Thursday. That's Yom Kippur. And I said to her, excuse me, but that's Yom Kippur. And she says, is that another holiday? And I said, it's like the major holiday, and it's really not a holiday. We fast for 24 hours. I can't eat, I can't drink, I can't leave the shul, I can't travel out anywhere without being able to walk there. And then I see her turning into the Sukkot pages. And you can't explain Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. You're not going to be able to explain Sukkot and Simchas Torah and Shmini Atzeres. And I look at her and I said, excuse me, I can't come here in October. And she said, why not? And I did something which I never do, especially in a court. I said, I'm having heart surgery. It just came out. And 5 years later, I had an emergency bypass. So God punished me for that lie. But she was completely understanding. Oh, well, sir, I'm sorry. I hope everything's okay. And we went into November. And now I come back in November, and the first thing the judge asks me when I walk in is, how are you feeling, Mr. Brafman? And thank God I remembered. Because I was going to say, why are you asking? But I remembered, and I said, you know, Judge, at the end, they didn't need to operate. They were able to control the condition with medication, but I appreciate your concern. And he says, well, that's great. I'm happy to hear that. So it all worked out at the end of the day, and I got him local counsel, and I never went back to Tallahassee again. Tallahassee's not Miami. Tallahassee is, you know, horse breeding and pig farming. So the people in Tallahassee are not going to relate well to a Jewish lawyer from New York, and I finally convinced them, and he got a good old boy from Tallahassee, and it worked out very well. But you think everybody understands your holiday schedule. They don't. And you're going to have to deal with that. This past Yontif, this past October, was impossible to get anything done. There was no continuity. Everything was Monday, Tuesday. You disappear from Monday and Tuesday, and then you show up on Wednesday. And then it happens again and again and again and again. And you can do it if you are consistent, and if you are honest, and if people really believe that this is important to you in your life. So I started by telling you 40 years ago, some of these law firms would not hire someone who was Shomer Shabbos and came. Today, at Sullivan Cromwell, one of the oldest, most respected law firms, there are 20 people working there in black yarmulkes who have a shear every day at 1 o'clock in a conference room. I mean, Sullivan or Cromwell probably spinning in their graves. But it's true. And when you go into their cafeteria, there's a section for glatt kosher. Now, most of this is due to the fact that one of their most successful lawyers is an Orthodox lawyer who decided that since he is such a big rainmaker, he could do this and insist on it. But in every hospital, in every law firm, in every business, there are Shomer Shabbos kids who are being allowed to take off for Shabbos, are going to be allowed to take off for Yontif. Now, I'm a public person. And for me, sometimes, because I work in the public eye, I'm able to do something that maybe you can or cannot do. And sometimes I have no idea what it means to other people. And you'll be able to do it as well, even if you don't become a well-known person who has access to the media. Because you may do it in banking, you may do it in a finance job, you may do it in a teaching job. You may be able to inject other people with a sense of respect. So let me try, before we bring this to a close at some point, to dispel certain facts that aren't true, that aren't accurate. Every once in a while, an Orthodox Jew gets in trouble, and it becomes a public issue. You know why? Because scandal sells. You have websites in the yeshiva world that exist, in my opinion, only to spread Lashon Hara. And sometimes we are our own worst enemies because we can't help ourselves. Lashon Hara is seductive. You hear something bad, you want to tell everyone. It's not everyone's business. But sometimes a member of the Orthodox community gets in trouble, and it's broadcast, and it's talked about, and the appearance that the non-Jewish world gets is that, I told you Orthodox Jews are dishonest. I told you that they don't play by the rules. I told you that they are at times acting inappropriately. And they are right and they're wrong. Yes, on occasion. And I know this because I'm usually standing next to that person. On occasion, an Orthodox Jew screws up, and sometimes royally. And sometimes it's because they didn't mean it, and sometimes it's because they were desperate and they wanted to try their best to support their family and the lifestyle they become accustomed to, and in order to do it, they had to cut corners, and sometimes they never intended to violate the law, and sometimes they are good people who just screwed up. And sometimes they're just a venal, corrupt individual who's not wired well. We have that on occasion, but it's rare, and it's not who we are. And it's not who you should think we are. And when people try to collectively embarrass or point fingers, you need to defend your community. Orthodox Jews and young people like you give the most tzedakah, do the most chesed, are the most caring of the people anywhere. And it's something we need to be proud of. And that's what we need to spread when it happens. Something good that somebody does. Something good that a school does. The world perception is wrong. The Israel bashing is wrong. And you need to be the ambassadors of the Jewish people. You know, everyone in this room has someone in their extended family who was either in a concentration camp or who died during the Shoah. Every single person in this room, if you extend out your search, will find a member of your family or extended family who were put to death only because they were Jews. So the Shoah happened. And you know what's wrong with what's going on in today's world? The survivors are dying. And when my generation is gone, there will be no more eyewitnesses. So you need to be the witnesses. You need to know about the grandparents and great-grandparents, not just that they were in Buchenwald or Auschwitz and they never came back, but what they did before, and who you're named after, and who your grandchildren will be named after. And you need to tell your children about their lives and about the lives that were snuffed out. Then that's just not numbers, and it's not 6 million. My mother, by some miracle, came to this country when she was 15. Her parents and her sister and her sister's husband and their baby were murdered in Auschwitz, but my mother was not. So my mother survived, and she, if she was still alive today, there are 75, 85, 90 grandchildren, great-grandchildren that she has had and continues to have even after her death. We didn't lose 6 million people. We lost 1 billion. 1 billion Jews. Do the math. Many of the European families had 7, 8, 9, 10 children in many of these Hasidic villages. Those people would have gone on to live good lives. They were not bad people. They did nothing wrong. They violated no law. They were murdered because they were Jews during the darkest time in history. And today, with the internet and with digital technology, there are hundreds of thousands and millions of people who are debating whether the Shoah happened. You know, Schindler's List by Steven Spielberg was a brilliant work, and it's a powerful film, and it did a lot of good for people who didn't understand what the Shoah really was. But he recreated a real Holocaust, and people are now using the power of a Spielberg to recreate the Holocaust to suggest that it was a creation, and that it never really happened. And you need to be the ambassadors in the next generation who are going to stand up and say it happened. I had a grandfather. I had a great-grandfather. He had brothers and sisters. I have hundreds of cousins I never got to meet because they were murdered because they were Jews. You can't let it slide. If I don't accomplish anything else this morning except turn you into a willing ambassador to keep the memory of the 6 million Kedoshim alive, then I will have spent a very, very fulfilling and important morning. And when you go home tonight and you ask by your parents, or you want to tell your parents what you learned today, surprise them. Tell them that you learned that the Shoah really happened. And that for the rest of your life, when given an opportunity to talk about it, don't become fanatic. Don't become crazy, but be intellectually honest. When you read something in a newspaper that's dishonest about Eretz Yisrael, and people mention it to you, be prepared to respond. Israel can fit inside the state of California 50 times. Think about that for a second. Israel can fit inside the state of California 50 times. It's a tiny nation. At its narrowest point, it's only 9 miles wide. Take a missile 2 seconds to get to the heart of Yerushalayim. And when Israel was involved in the war in Gaza 2 years ago, what did you hear every night on the news? The body count. There were hundreds of Palestinians who were killed and only 6 Jews. There were 270 Palestinians killed and only 8 Jews. Since when have you ever heard any war discussed except when it comes to Israel? Did you ever hear the President of the United States caution Syria or Lebanon or Yemen or Iraq or Afghanistan to not use disproportionate force when responding to an attack? It's only used when Israel is attacked. And because of its military might, they can, if they wanted to, just carpet bomb Gaza and destroy everyone who lives there. But instead, when they are bombed and bombed and bombed, and they fight back, the world condemns them. When the World War II ended and Dresden was bombed, there were far more civilians who died than soldiers in the German army. Does that mean that because the body count was higher, that we were wrong in bombing, or that somebody was doing something inappropriate? You need to be intellectually honest. You know, I once did a mock cross-examination of a Hamas official during that war. And that's what I do. I cross-examine people. So the discussion was, well, there were just only a few Jews killed, and look how many people were killed in Gaza. So, people think I'm a brilliant cross-examiner. It's not hard when you're cross-examining someone who's lying or misleading. So here were the questions. It was like 2 minutes. It says, when you launch the missiles from Gaza, do you have any control over where they might land? No. Do you hope that they will land in a civilian population center? Yes. When you launch the missile, is it your intention to kill as many Jews as possible, whether they're civilians or soldiers? Yes, that is our dream. And because Israel is able to intercept, and because God has blessed them with technology to create the Iron Dome, some of those missiles don't get through, correct? Yes. But when you launch them, your intention is to kill as many Jews as possible. Is that correct? Yes. Don't you understand that when Israel attacks a missile launcher and it is surrounded and embedded in a UN facility, nobody says to the United Nations, how did those missiles get into the United Nations facility? Who allowed this to happen? Instead, Israel is attacked because in responding to a missile attack, they targeted what one would perceive to be a civil population. At the end of the day, we could talk about the unfairness for the next 2 hours if I could stay. But, Israel is alone. And you want to take a year and go study in Israel? Kol hakavod. You want to volunteer and join the Israeli army and be a lone soldier? Kol hakavod. Some of you will probably do that. And every year in the Friends of IDF in the South Shore, we honor the lone soldiers. But that's not the only way you can help Israel, by going to learn and going to fight. You can help by just being smart. Understand what you're talking about. Don't just respond by a shrug of your shoulders. Most of you were not alive in the 1967 war. But before that war, you could not go to the Kotel. I could not go to the Kotel when Jordan controlled Jerusalem. Jews were banned. Today it's an open city. And yet the world thinks Israel has no connection and should have no right to be in Jerusalem at all. And time after time after time, when you go through the actual, from the date of the partition until the present date, it's not Israel who has walked away from the peace table. It's always been the PLO. It's always been the Palestinian leaders. In the Hamas charter, they discuss the elimination of Israel, that it is the obligation of a Hamas member to destroy the state. Brett Stephens, who I quoted earlier, said something very brilliant in one of his articles. He said, you don't make friends with your enemy, you make friends with the former enemy. All Hamas needs to do is renounce its constitution, which calls for the destruction of Israel, and be willing to sit across the table and negotiate, and there would have been a Palestinian state when Bill Clinton offered it to Yasser Arafat, who walked out. And he would have gotten 98% of what they refer to as the West Bank, which is Judea and Samaria, which has more connection to Jews than any other place in Jerusalem, in the country. And yet what we are being cast as, we're being cast as the bad guys, and we're not. And I'm saying we're not because I'm an intellectually honest person who understands history and who understands the need for us to be ambassadors. So I want to end with a funny example of cross-examination, which I think sums up what I've tried to do here. And it's, again, sometimes people listen to a lecture like this, they don't take notes, they're hopefully not recording it, then at the end they say, well, what did you learn? And they remember a story because it has humor. And I see Rabbi Schreier, who is here and who was a rabbinic intern in my shul, and not just a brilliant rabbi, and I've told him this himself, so I'm not looking to embarrass him, but he has a terrific sense of humor. And it's inevitable that the portion of the drasha that he makes us smile or laugh about, he wraps it into the theme of what he's trying to convey. And it's a powerful way to take something away. You remember the story, and then you remember why the story was told. So here's the story. This is what I do when I cross-examine. There's a busy intersection in an old village, and a horse-drawn wagon is pulling into the intersection, and there's a driver and a wagon and a horse. And a wild dog runs out into the intersection, and it scares the horse. And the horse rears up on its hind legs and falls over onto the dog, and the wagon falls over onto the driver. And now it's 10 years later when the driver is suing the insurance company, and the insurance company doesn't want to pay, and the insurance company lawyer puts a police officer on the stand, and he says to the police officer, "Were you at the scene of the accident?" He said, "Yes." "When you spoke to the driver after the accident, what did the driver say?" And he looks in his memo book and he says, "The driver said, 'I'm okay, I'm okay.'" And now the driver is suing for all of the damages he suffered in the accident. Now, Ben Brafman gets up to question the police officer and just says one question. "Can you tell me everything you saw from the moment you approached the driver before he said, 'I'm okay, I'm okay'? Just tell me what went on." So he said, "Well, it was a horrible scene. I walked up to the accident scene, and the horse was on the dog, and the dog had suffered horrific injuries, and I shot the dog in the head to put him out of his misery. And then I looked at the horse, and the horse had 2 broken legs and was bleeding from his head and writhing in pain, and I walked over and I shot the horse, and then I turned to the driver and he said, 'I'm okay. I'm okay.'" It's the same words. It's just 2 words. But the way you say it, the context in which it is said, can have such a different meaning and lasting impression. So you're bright, very blessed students who have the opportunity to get an extraordinary good education in one of the most beautiful academic facilities in the yeshiva world, so take advantage of it. But leave here with more than just an education. Leave here with an attitude. Not that you are better than others, not that you are smarter than others, but on certain subjects, like the Shoah, like Israel, like Menschlichkeit, like Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem, leave here with an understanding of how much good you can accomplish in the lives that I hope all of you have for many, many years, and then hope and pray that you also have some mazel. So thank you. It's nice to meet all of you.